Are you a startup founder considering launching or relocating your business in Cambridge? What if Cambridge, one of Europe's leading deep tech hubs, was easier to access than ever? Introducing Launch Cambridge, a powerful new initiative bringing together trusted local experts in workspace, legal, finance, banking and relocation, giving you a seamless, de-risked path into the UK's most dynamic innovation ecosystem. Visit launchcambridge.com for more information.
Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So welcome back, James. We had an interloper last week in your absence, so it's good to have you back.
Yeah, I heard that. I've lost my job. But I'm back. I had a good week, thank you. Enjoyed the sunshine. It's that classic, isn't it? We always moan the weather's terrible, and then when it's lovely, we moan it's too hot. It's been a week of coping with the heat, but thanks for covering the fort for me while I was away. This week's been loads of great meetings, always planning. There's always something cooking behind the scenes. I also popped over to Bury St Edmunds for the AI Festival, which was held at the STEM Centre at West Suffolk College. So that was nice to visit somewhere I'd never been before. I met some new faces, some new people. I chatted with Mike Williams, who's running the new Stowmarket Innovation Gateway. So I'm definitely going to go over there and have a look at that. Also had a really good chat with Stuart Catchpole, who's the director of Space East. Seems like we're mentioning space a lot recently in the last couple of months. So they support the growth and development of the UK space sector in the east of England. So we should try and get Stuart on. So it was a really interesting conversation we had. Also saw a few Cambridge faces. Barclays Eagle Labs were there, Mills and Reeve were there, Chris Ellis was there. So yeah, an enjoyable day out. How about you?
I was up in Manchester again last week and again this week. So just still meeting so many people, which is great. It's things like the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, their growth hub. They have 300 people in the growth hub alone. The scale of Manchester is really quite overwhelming, and they're doing some really great stuff. So continuing to meet lots of people across Manchester, whether it's university, the public sector. Yeah, and so just busy up north. Got stuck on a train last week, 4 hours at 30 degrees. That was not pleasant, but there's nothing I can do about the trains, I don't think. So we'll leave that one for another day. What else? I've been prepping for, we're going to the Global R&D Investment Summit, which is taking place on Monday and Tuesday of London Tech Week. So back to a bit of event organisation on that one. And yeah, like you, the heat. I'm glad it's a little bit more normal now.
Glad I wasn't on a train for 4 hours. Not that much.
Indeed. So should we just do some quick news? I think we've got a couple of pieces for you today. The first up is Cambridge and Colorado-based quantum computing trailblazer Quantinuum's NASDAQ IPO is tipped to reach around $13 billion valuation, which is outstanding. Business Weekly believe this is the first IPO in the quantum computing space. The market globally for quantum is tipped to exceed $20 billion by 2030. As it looks to enhance genomics and general drug discovery, defense, cryptology, security, logistics, climate modeling, and much more. So, I mean, that's a big chunk valuation within that market. So let's watch that one with interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Regular listeners might remember that we covered the ARM IPO quite extensively. So yeah, we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled for news on the IPO head in the quantum space. 42 Technology has played a central role in helping Omnisense, a fellow Cambridge-based business specialising in terrestrial positioning, to demonstrate safer autonomous drone landing systems when satellite navigation signals are unreliable. The system uses a ground-based ultra-wide positioning technology that has been developed by Omnisense through its European Space Agency-supported Drone Home programme. Autonomous landing is one of the most safety-critical phases of any drone mission and is particularly challenging when a device's satellite navigation system is impaired due to signal obstruction, reflection, or interference, for example, when operating near tall buildings, in busy ports, or inside tunnels. We're delighted to support Omnisense in delivering its groundbreaking Drone Home project. GNSS underpins many of today's critical systems, So developing a terrestrial positioning technology, far more reliable autonomous operations in challenging environments is a major advance for drone safety, said Paul Bale-Park, Head of Electronics and Software for 42 Technology.
Yeah, it's amazing how much things in the sky are starting to take off now. So I think this kind of technology is going to be very important moving forward, isn't it? Okay, so this week's episode, again, whilst you were off, I caught up with Dr. Robin Sterling, who talked about his 2 decades of experience in quantum computing and deep tech systems engineering before he founded Coherence Engine, a company designing system-level validation for quantum computing. Robin, hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Hi, well, nice to be here.
So I believe you're from Brighton originally.
Yeah, that's right. I grew up, well, just a bit north of Brighton, but I grew up there and I ended up going back to do my PhD there as well.
And so how did you end up in Cambridge?
I actually came to Cambridge after I left academia. So I was living in Israel at the Weizmann Institute. I was doing a postdoc there, and then I decided academia wasn't for me. I was looking around for jobs. Cambridge has obviously got a lot of science-based jobs, consultancy-type jobs. So I thought I'd end up doing that. And then I got a job working for a cat flap company, making smart cat flaps, which was interesting.
Okay, I mean, that's gone on a complete tangent that I wasn't expecting, but that's all good. Was it an AI-driven cat flap?
No, nothing.
No, just cat flaps?
The cat flap was based on a new or novel technology to measure the RFID chip that's implanted in most cats. When a cat comes up to the cat flap, it would measure this chip and it would let the cat in or not. And so I joined as an R&D engineer to work on new products. So using my physics background to work on new sensors and new pet care solutions to things like measuring the body temperature of a dog while it's running around. So using a smart collar or a pet feeder that would only let the correct pet feed from the device, that kind of thing.
So you found yourself working in Cambridge, and we'll come back to some of the other roles you had in Cambridge as well. But then I believe you're now in Norwich.
Yeah, that's right. So I worked in Cambridge for about 8 years, and then I moved to Norwich a couple of years ago to be with my partner.
We have many people that we speak to from the Norwich community as well. So we very much cover across the east of England. Let's go back to what you studied. I believe it was quantum computing.
Yeah, so I did my PhD in ion trap-based quantum computing. The idea being you trap a single atom above a chip, and then when you get lots of atoms above this chip, you can move them around and with lasers perform special operations, and you can build a quantum computer with this technology.
20 years ago, you started in the quantum space. So you must have quite a view on the industry and what has happened over the last 20 years.
It's actually been really remarkable to see. So 20 years ago, I started doing my PhD in it, and it was very much, this is at least 10 years away. The intention was very much to build useful quantum computers. It wasn't pure blue sky research. It was to build a useful machine, but it was very early in that development. And then over that time, it's gone from these early academic experiments, more and more impressive demonstrations. And then about 10, 12 years ago, that's when lots of startups started moving out of academia. They started founding companies. And this research really started to accelerate, where we started to get venture capital money being pumped into the field. The size of the experiments got much bigger. The level of technology improved very rapidly. It's really been impressive how over the last 10 years, the progress that this field has seen from, as I said, academia to now, where you have these really amazing devices. And in my field, companies like Quantinuum, who are doing ion trap-based research, what they're building and demonstrating today was a bit of a pipe dream. When I started my PhD 20 years ago, it was the vision we were hoping to get towards, but there was always a part of me which thought, we'll never get there, it'll never be achievable. Whilst these systems are still too small to do any useful quantum computation, just from an engineering perspective, they're just an amazing feat of engineering. It's really exciting to have seen that progress over this time.
I know certainly from the Cambridge Tech podcast point of view, we've had Ilyas on from Quantinuum, Steve's been on from Riverlane and New Quantum. Are they the kind of first generation companies that you would highlight as those examples?
Yeah, so I think that's the first generation of companies where they were founded in the sort of the mid-2010s and have been really driving that progress, yeah.
You talked then about some of the applications that are starting to come through, starting to look like more of a reality. If you were going to hedge your bet, where would you go in terms of what type of application? Is it going to be life science, materials discovery? Is it going to be something like that?
I will say there's been some really amazing recent research on breaking codes, and that was always thought of as a much longer term roadmap, where now that seems much more near term. Through conversations I've been having recently, even to the point where maybe that's an early application or early use, which is, amazing. And I think it just shows that actually there is no like crystal ball. Tomorrow someone might release a paper or there might be some research done which says, oh, this application is much nearer term than we previously thought. So maybe codes, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering me, putting you on the spot there. And then we've had the announcement earlier on this year? I think it was, about the largest quantum computer being based here in Cambridge. What do you think about that and that opening up opportunities for more people to actually get involved and get hands-on?
It's obviously really great news. It's great, both that institutions are buying these machines because they are maybe the biggest machines or the largest machines, but they're still much smaller than what is actually useful. I think there's obviously a lot of hype driven around, it's of such size, such complexity, which is great from a technical development perspective, but we should always keep in sight that these are potentially orders of magnitude smaller than they need to be. So I think that the fact that they are being bought is good because it helps the system, it helps the ecosystem grow, drives revenue, and gets us closer to the end point where they are useful. And of course, it's great just more broadly to get people interested in the industry, learn about the industry, learn about quantum computing.
Let's move on now and talk about Coherence Engine. What is it? What does it do? What is the company?
The background behind Coherence Engine, that really comes from that long experience, both in academia and in industry, but also industry that's not quantum based. So I spent years as an experimental physicist building lasers, building vacuum systems, trapping ions, struggling with these very complex machines to get very rudimentary things working. Things now you can buy off the shelf, I spent months building. It's a very long, painful, torturous experience, as anyone who's done it will know. And then what we've seen in the last 10 years is in companies trying to take this technology, trying to commercialize it, to take it from something that takes a group of PhD students a couple of years to build to being something that's repeatable and engineerable. And then also my personal experience outside of quantum, so building cat flaps, or then a job after that I had where I was building prop replicas from film and TV, so things like Rick and Morty and Star Trek and Harry Potter. That experience where it's a very different thing you're building. You're building an embedded device, and this has to cost $5, $10 at the factory in China. You're going to make 200,000 of them, and they all have to work, and you can't go in and you can't change them afterwards. Real mass market production. And so I've got this sort of roadmap of experience where going from very experimental, you spend years building it and you want it to work once, to an industry which is trying to take that and make it work reliably and have very high uptime on AWS or something. And then also the experience of real consumer market, mass production. You're building hundreds of thousands of them. You need to have that engineering behind them. And I think Coherence Engine is sort of born out of this mixture of experience where you still, in the quantum industry, it's still in this growing phase where we're moving from being very reliant on PhD graduates coming out of universities, having spent their academic career building the machines, bringing that experience into lab, using that experience to build the next generation. Tools are being built around it. They are getting better. The engineering behind a lot of them is amazing. So I don't want to take away from that. But there still is a lot to do. And these systems are still 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times too small to be useful. And so really Coherence Engine is looking at all of that and saying, okay, how do we help the industry move from these small, very complex systems? How do we take them from that to where they need to be, say, 100 times bigger than they are today? And what you really hit is then a bottleneck of complexity. So today, these are extremely complex systems, but they're just at the edge where we can write Python scripts, we can use AI, we can use our intuition and knowledge to maintain that and keep a handle of that complexity. But we can't make that 100 times bigger. We need to be able to offload that complexity into something else, something that helps us understand it, abstract it, and ultimately automate it. And this is what the classical computing world did in the 80s, where CPU design the number of transistors got to the point where it had to be automated. You can't manually make a CPU of 1 million transistors or now 1 billion transistors. That process has to be automated. Similarly, in quantum, we've got to that bottleneck where we can't meaningfully scale beyond where we are today without bringing in that automation, bringing in that abstraction. That's a long-winded way of saying that's what Coherence Engine is really aiming to do. So we're trying to say, okay, let's take that complexity, let's build simulations of the hardware. So that's a simulation of your dilution fridge, your electronics, chip level design, but also your control stack. So that's your FPGAs, your GPUs, your CPUs that are running your pulse control, running your error correction, running your algorithms. Let's build simulations of all of these different parts at a very high level and then digging down. And then through these simulations, you start to understand how these systems are operating and all of the high order effects like crosstalk and all the non-intuitive aspects that come out, you start to learn about and you start to be able to design and build and optimize around. So that's what Coherence Engine is really trying to build, that kind of simulation and abstraction, and ultimately design and validation of future systems. So when you want to build the next computer that's 5 times bigger than the one you have today or 10 times bigger than the one you have today, you can design it, you can simulate it, and then you can validate it before you actually buy any hardware. And that's the goal here, because that's how you get that 10, 100,000x scaling that we need to get to.
So ultimately, you're helping companies to simulate so that they can build and scale a lot quicker when it doesn't actually exist, the ability to be able to do that.
Exactly. In a much more concise sentence, yes.
Okay. No, that's perfect. I just want to make sure that I understand it. Is it just companies in the quantum space or companies wanting to leverage the quantum ecosystem?
We're really targeting the quantum ecosystem. So that's not just companies that are building full computers like Quantinuum or IBM or Google or Rigetti. It's also the supply chain. So people building the component parts. So that's the fridges or the amplifiers or the control boxes. But it is really targeting the quantum space. We do see potential for this system level design, simulation, and validation. We do see use cases for this type of system level design and validation beyond quantum. Now, very early in our journey, but there are many industries where you have very complex, heterogeneous systems of all sorts of analog and digital components where the ability to reason about that and reason about that at scale will be very important. But it's still very early in what we're developing. So that's for us in a few years' time.
Yeah, so let's talk about how early it is for you. How long have you been going? What stage are you up to? Do you have something in play right now?
So we were founded in August last year and we received our pre-seed funding in January. There's myself and a couple of others and we're building our MVP. We have partnerships with both academia and commercial companies while we're doing that. And so we're really targeting to release our first product later in the year. So that's where we are today.
Okay. And you said you raised your pre-seed. What was that experience like?
It's very much a journey. And I guess it echoes what everyone talks about when they're fundraising. It's a roller coaster of emotions where you start very excited and then you have a bunch of calls and then you're sort of trying to get traction and trying to build the product and trying to build a company and filling your time with investor calls. And it is a challenge. My partner was pregnant at the time, so I had the very clear deadline of when I had to get money in the bank. Added a lot more pressure to it, as you can imagine, but equally gave me a lot of focus. It was a difficult journey, but we got there.
And does that give you a reasonable run rate, or will you be looking at funding again soon?
We're going to hire up to giving us a 12-month runway with the intention of raising our seed round towards the end of this year.
You've talked, Robin, about different roles that you've had, and it's 20 years since you started in the quantum space. What made you go, actually, now I want to be a founder? What made you start that journey?
I think I've always wanted to be a founder. Before I got my job in Cambridge, between the time I left academia and started my job at the cat flap company, there was about 6 months. And I did a lot of hobbying, I did a lot of tinkering around. I like making things. I got very into Arduino and that kind of whole world of electronics. And I think the idea there, I really like the idea of building little gadgets and trinkets and things and selling them, not at a venture scale, but just as a side business, a hobby, really. I don't know what my expectations of being a founder were. I learned a huge amount from doing it the first time. And a lot of those learnings have gone into doing it this time. Things not to do, but also things to do. I think you hear a lot of people talking about being a founder and the stress and the lack of sleep and the amount of work. And that's all true. I had the idea for the company beginning of last year. At the time, it was more of a coming off the back of a failed startup. It was probably this is never going to happen, but I've got this good idea. And then through a series of fortunate events, I went to a conference. I tested this idea out on a lot of engineers from big companies and got a lot of traction with it. And then through connections I'd made from my first startup, I met Cambridge Future Tech, who were interested and really supportive. And then ultimately we formed a company together. And that was incredibly useful for me because I think without Cambridge Future Tech, as a solo founder, it would probably have been too big a task to do that alone.
It's interesting you mentioning Cambridge Future Tech there, because it is almost a non-traditional investment model, but obviously that has worked really well for you as a solo entrepreneur. Just tell us a little bit about what that experience has been like with CFT.
Yeah, I think CFT have been brilliant, actually, especially from my circumstances. So coming off the back of an unsuccessful startup, but through that startup, I'd been part of an incubator at the NQCC, and they made the introduction to Cambridge Future Tech. So I met them. We had a series of early conversations where I met them online, but also came in person, shared my thinking, shared what I wanted to build with them. They were really supportive. And then when we decided to found the company together, they were really excellent in all of that kind of company building aspect that they really contribute to. So they've been really instrumental in taking this idea that I had and helping me form a company around it and ultimately getting investment for it. It has been a really great experience. And especially as a solo founder, and particularly in my circumstance where coming off the other startup, I was contracting part-time and perhaps in a more precarious position to take a few less risks. Having that support was incredibly, incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I know. I think that's the thing, isn't it? They have that whole ecosystem within CFT to actually help the startups to be able to get those good groundings in place for them. So Robin, I think it's been really, really interesting. You are still very early in the journey, but I think listeners will really appreciate you sharing your experiences from the quantum industry and having started one company that were not working and then being resilient enough to start another one and approach it in a slightly different way than probably many of our other companies on the podcast have done. So you've said you're going to look at fundraising. Are you looking at expanding?
Yeah, so we're actively hiring at the minute, and we're actively expanding the team. And then, towards the end of the year, we'll start fundraising for our seed round.
Brilliant. And where do people go to find out more information about Coherence Engine?
So the best place is probably coherenceengine.tech. That's probably the best place to find any information and contact.
All right, super. Thank you so much for your time today, Robin.
Today's show was produced by Joe Donaghy of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.
Thinking about switching to electric, but not sure where to start? Head to the Holden Group's Electrify Your Drive event from the 4th to 6th of June at the GridServe Electric Forecourt in Norwich. Test drive over 20 electric vehicles from leading brands, all in one place. Whether you're EV curious or ready to make the switch, this is your chance to experience electric properly. Book your slot now at electrifyyourdrive.co.uk.